Good afternoon. So, not going to beat about the bush or pose any questions around this, right? In terms of this government, because at the end of the day, look, these are just not good people, right? They have no interest in making things better for you, allowing for any sort of prosperity amongst Irish people. None of that stuff. Your safety does not matter to them. If anything, it's the contrary, okay? So at the moment, you're seeing Simon Harris talking about bringing in 50 men, I would assume, from Palestine, right, to come and be students in Ireland, right? All expenses paid. At the same time, he's talking about increasing our peacekeeping capabilities and operations in the Middle East, in the Lebanon, right? So what he's doing is bringing in sleeper cells from one of the most radicalized regions in the world, right? At the same time, he's looking to send Irish soldiers into the Middle East. Make it out whatever you want, right? But there's no good outcome from that, right? It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's just evil and sinister, okay? And whatever blood befalls these actions, it's squarely on his hands, okay? There's no point in questioning what these people are doing or getting frustrated with the decisions they're making and being appalled and annoyed. Why can't they see? They know what they're doing, right? They know what they're doing. And the outcome is the intention and the motivation for making the decisions that they make. But what I wanted to highlight today is based on the back of that, right? The acceptance and the recognition that those who are calling the calls and calling the shots in this country, while we abdicate that, right? Because at any given moment, all Irish people, or a good chunk of Irish people, could get together, go and say, look, consequences be damned. We're not tolerating this anymore. We cannot continue living like this, right? And we will remove any source that is hell-bent on steering us in the same direction, right? We're just not going to do it anymore. But in the absence of that, we have these people who are making decisions that impact our daily lives. And they're not good people. It's not even a question of whether they're just incompetent or whether they're stupid. They're not either of them things, right? They are executing whatever orders they're given immaculately. They are incredibly efficient in terms of doing what they're told to do, and probably get some kicks out of it, right? So, like, you look at schoolboy Simon Harris, and he was not liked growing up. I would imagine he was laughed at and sneered at and ridiculed growing up. And I would imagine he has a serious chip on his shoulder, right? And he has no love for Irish people. None of that stuff. He's none of that, right? Whatever lineage he comes from, it's not steeped in any sort of reverence for one's ancestors or respect for the land or respect for being in this land or being with the people of Ireland, right? He's got none of that stuff. None of it. And stemming from that then, or flowing from that, you have, obviously they have their aims, which are not good for Irish people. You can see it. We've been looking at it just unfold blatantly in front of our eyes. Nearly every single decision that they make is bad for Irish people. And it is good for all of these people that they're bringing in from these war-torn countries, right? And they're probably right on the war-torn country part, okay? But what they're not telling you is that what they're bringing in here are assets that have been deployed to subvert and to overthrow foreign governments and to fight proxy wars against Russia. And in the Middle East, in the Ukraine, in the Lebanon, right, in Afghanistan, look at all these people that are coming here. They're from the surrounding countries around Russia, right? And we've been told, right, that the West and Russia were engaged in the Cold War, and then that ended, tear down that wall, all that stuff. It never ended, right? It never ended. It continued on. And that's why you have the destabilization of the Middle East, right? Because they're both vying for that position. They're both vying for the Suez Canal, right? And the ability to build and navigate the trade routes from the West to the East and vice versa, right? So they're fighting over that. And that's what Ireland, right? So we're now housing these people that are coming back that have been CIA funded, British intelligence funded, trained, all that sort of stuff. And now when it gets too hot in these areas and these assets need to retreat and withdraw, for their service, they get given homes in the West. This has been going on for decades and decades and decades, okay? And that's what you're seeing. So you're seeing these assets coming to Ireland from Afghanistan, from Georgia, from Albania, from the Ukraine, right? All these countries that have been involved in proxy warfare with Russia. That's what's going on. And now you're looking at it with Palestine as well, right? It's the same thing. These people are mercenaries. And they are assets of Western intelligence agencies that have served their function, and now they're being granted their reward, which is home and the promise of security and flourishing in Western nations, right? And that's what they've been given. And that's why their needs are elevated above Irish people's needs, because they are intelligence assets. And they have some dirt on people that are in the West. Of course they do, right? They have secrets. And their secrets and silence is being bought now. Their services are being paid for. Okay? They're collecting their price. So that's what these people are doing. That's what Simon Harris is doing here. Right? This support from Palestine is not just isn't it terrible what's going on over their thing. Right? It's not. It's supporting the very terrorist networks that are involved in that, which are funded by British intelligence and Western intelligence as a whole, nearly, right? So that's what's going on there. And that brings me to the main point of this. That in order for governments to be able to manage, manipulate and corral the people that they're managing, right? Because that's what these people are doing. They're in a management position, which is managing a country and managing a population of a nation. In order to do that, again, so take it back to yourself, right? So you're managing 4 or 5 people in a team. In order to be effective at managing these people and getting these people to want to work for you and to support you, you have to get to know these people. You need to know their strengths, you need to know their weaknesses, you need to know their ambitions, and you need to know the things that bother them, right? So you learn how to talk to these people. You learn how to work with the team, right? Otherwise you face a mutiny. And people cut the back off, you don't like you, and then you're out the door, right? It's just an upscaled version, being in the Irish government. It's just a bigger manager's job, okay? So in order to do that, you need to understand the people that you're managing. And as anybody that's engaged in any sort of fight, any sort of tactical thinking, whatever the case is, even any sports, right? You need to understand the strengths and the virtues and the abilities of the opponent. And as is natural when managing a nation, right? The population you're managing is always going to exceed the number of people that are managing. So you need to be able to limit their ability to use their strengths, or even better, turn their strengths and virtues against them and weaponize the things that make the people strong. And weaponize that against them so it weakens them even further. And one of the things that makes Irish people particularly strong is our ability to endure, right? Our ability to endure and to accept horrendous living situations, okay? And it's in our everyday speech, right? And we say it without even realizing it or without reflecting on the fact that it's representative of a total philosophical worldview and of our morality as Irish people, right? So things like, Asher could always be worse, right? If you're going through something, Asher, look, it could always be worse. Or look, sure, at least I'm not Johnny down the road, geez, into the awful what's going on with him. We do this when we're speaking about the tough situations that we're in. We compare it to something else, and we tend to minimize the impact of whatever's going on with ourselves by comparing it to a worse situation or a situation that we perceive as worse, and then kind of minimize and neutralize the impact of what's going on for us, right? So something bad is happening to you, and we say, sure, look, it could be worse. At least I'm not Johnny down the road. Sure, then his whole family just died. Right? And it's only my dog that died and my house burnt down, but his whole family's gone. So I'm not doing too bad in comparison, right? But that doesn't mean that what you're going through is still not horrendous, right? We never want to be seen, and this is a really, really strong thing in Irish people, right? We never want to be seen to be the person that's doing the worst, or the person that is seen to be playing the victim, right? We don't need your charity, right? We don't look for sympathy that much. We never want to be seen as the person that needs the hand extended to them, right? So we do this. We neutralize our genuine grievances by comparing it to something else that we're not going through, right? And I think that this is what Palestine and what's going on over there is effectively being used for in terms of the Irish media. Is it wrong what's going on there? I don't know what's going on there. Are people dying needlessly over there? Probably it looks like it, right? Do I have a bleeding heart and am I full of empathy for it? No, I'm not. I'm not really, right? Would I wish that people would stop being blown up and killing each other? Naturally, right? Naturally. I don't stay awake at night thinking about it. I have no intention of going over there trying to bring food to these people. My life is here. My interest is here. That's the end of it, right? We have enough problems going on here, and that's onto my point. Because we're constantly bombarded with Palestinian messaging from politicians, from celebrities, from bleeding hearts, from these NGO-sponsored protesters, from these college students who you would imagine they'd spend their time actually engaging in the subject matter in which they're supposed to be learning, until you realise that the purpose of them being in college is to become these activists, right? And I think that's largely why third level education has been relatively open to nearly everyone in the country, right? Free indoctrination. These clowns will go in there and do this to themselves, right? They'll actually volunteer to be turned into lunatics, right? Great. Happy days. Happy days. And also the media itself, right? So we're and politicians were bombarded with this message that Palestine is the genocide, it's going on over there, and everybody should be super focused on what's going on in Palestine because we've never seen anything like this before, and it is just horrendous, right? And what that does is it takes some of the severity and the seriousness off of the situation that's occurring in Ireland, right? Because while it may look different on the surface, there's an active genocide happening in Ireland at the moment. Right, and you can look at it anyway. Are there people going around shooting and executing people, rounding us up onto trains or whatever the case is? Not yet, no. Right, maybe never. But our population is plummeting, right? We are propagandized and convinced that we are third-rate people in our own homelands and that we should accept being treated accordingly, right? And have our money stolen from us and given to other people to come in and occupy our land, right? And to squeeze us out of existence altogether in this country. The numbers don't lie, right? As time goes by, our populations plummet. As time goes by, our young people are born less and less. They're being aborted at ridiculous rates, about 10,000 of us a year, right? And our young people that do stay here, they either become suicidal, drug addicts, right? Miserable and depressed and on antidepressants, or they flee the country and go somewhere else, right? So we are being blown to pieces as a collective people, right? And as a resident people in their homeland. So make no mistake about it, there's a slow drip genocide occurring now, right? It's not kinetic warfare, large-scale kinetic warfare, but it's happening, right? We're targeted, we are chalked out for eradication. Anybody that would doubt that, off you go, doubt it all you want. But that is the reality of where we are. So our situation is just as serious, if you want to even compare them, but you don't have to. It's just as serious, and it falls under the same categories of what people are telling us is happening in Gaza, right, and happening in Palestine. So what the push and the marinating us all in the Palestinian stuff does is it offers us an out, right? It hijacks that desire and that tendency in us not to be seen as bottom of the barrel and in the worst situation. It allows us to blow that steam off by saying, geez, isn't it awful what's happening to them kids, and isn't it awful what's happening over in Palestine. Sure. And it might not even be a conscious thing. It's nearly a second nature thing or an instinctual thing that we compare our situation to what's out there without even realizing it, right? And as soon as we talk about isn't it terrible what's going on over there, we're automatically slotting ourselves in as secondary in importance to the main story of the time, right? Last year it was the Ukraine, and the terrible what's going on in the Ukraine. This year it's Palestine, and the terrible what's going on in Palestine. It stops us from taking our situation seriously. And it stops us from having to look and see that there's actions that need to be taken regarding our situation. Okay? So it allows us to not feel like we are so hard done by, not feel like we are victims, and not feel like we are not all we thought we were cracked up to be, okay? So stop doing that, I would suggest, right? And recognize that when it's happening, and listen when you see other people talk about that, right? Sure, ain't it terrible? You hear it nearly every day. Ain't it awful now? Right. But I would suggest this. It is also awful what is happening in this country. It is awful that we have allowed ourselves to be convinced that we don't matter in the grand scheme of things. And as soon as there's some other thing going on in the middle of a desert somewhere, Paddy's concerns are irrelevant, right? There's nobody going to come and give us permission to be concerned about what's going on with ourselves. We have to give ourselves that. And if we don't, the map is laid out, lads. We don't exist in 100 years if we don't get off our knees and start taking ourselves seriously.